So now that we've prepared our clay bowl for the oil sides, we need to apply the oil size itself. So what I like to use is this brand, Charbonnel. I just find it's a very, very good product. But you'll notice, at least with the style that I have, it's 12-hour size. So if I follow the manufacturer instructions, I have to put on the size, and then about 12 hours later, it would be ready to gild. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of Japan Dryer. So Japan Dryer is a chemical accelerant that will help that process go a little faster. Now you can buy oil size that's quicker drying, and there's advantages and disadvantages to slow or fast. The advantage of slow is that it gives the time for the oil to self-level, and you can get an extremely level flat gild with oil size. But personally, if I want a completely smooth size, a mirror finish, I'm just going to water gild. So I don't necessarily mind a faster drying size, even though you can't get it as smooth. So I'm going to just go ahead and put in a little bit of that Japan Dryer. Also, I like to apply the size with cheaper synthetic brushes, not the brushes that I paint with, because to clean the size off, it requires to use really harsh turpentine or chemical solvents, which I find are very taxing on brushes. So just go ahead and use one of your cheaper synthetics. So here I've prepared my oil size in this little dish, and I only really need a minimal amount of size. I'm just going to go ahead and just brush it on. And the oils and the size are nicely saturating that clay. And I'm just very careful not to get any on the plaster. If I see any ridges, I just want to knock those down. Because I put a little bit of dryer in it, it might not self-level as much as it would if I were waiting the full 12 hours. So I want to help it along to level. I'm just very gently spreading it out, smoothing it out. There we go. And I want it to be very even, so if it's a little thick in certain areas, I want to spread that around, try to very evenly distribute that oil on the clay. Now to get these areas in here. And I'm going to go all the way to the sides. I might paint a little border just to edge the panel out, but I don't want to leave any gap with that gold leaf. I'll just take it straight to the edge. There we go. Getting carefully in here in the beard. There we go. So I'm just going to go around and maybe give it one more pass with my brush just to make sure everything is nice and smooth. I don't see any puddles of oil or dramatic ridges. There we go. That looks pretty good. Oops, seem to have a little piece of lint in there. I'm going to take that out because that will show through the gold leaf. Okay. So this is going to take a while to dry, and I'll let you know how long it takes. But really, I find there's no way to accurately predict because it depends on humidity, temperature. There's so many different factors that go into the drying process. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it, and I will show you an interesting way that we can discern whether the oil size is ready to gild. And the last thing I'm going to do here is clean my brush. So I just have this brush cleaner container for oil solvents. I want to make sure to clean this brush really well right away. And after I clean this with the solvent, I'll go ahead and dry it with a paper towel and then wash it with soap and water. But if you let this size dry on your brush, you will destroy your brush. So now we come to the gilding process proper. So I'm going to go ahead and check my oil size to see if it's ready to gild. And the way I check that, I think I read this in Daniel Thompson's book on temper painting, and it's very helpful. But I'm going to take my finger, and very lightly, I'm going to rub my finger across the oil and listen for the sound. What I'm looking for is a few things. I don't want the oil to move. I don't want it to feel wet at all. I want it to have the sensation, the feeling of sticky tape. But really I'm looking for that high-pitched squeak. And once it has that high-pitched squeak, I know it's ready to gild. And this size is almost ready. The squeak is a little dull, but it should be ready in just a few minutes. So I'm going to set this aside and prepare my gold leaf for the application. Now, I like to use loose leaf gold for a variety of reasons. You can get gold that's already attached to tissue paper, but I prefer to buy mine loose. That way I can use the gold to do water gilding, which I use loose leaf to do, or I can use it for oil gilding. So one way to go about this is to use the traditional gilder's tip brush to handle the gold, because we can't handle the gold with our hands. It's far too delicate, far too thin to do that. But with oil gilding, I find there's always a risk of getting your bristles of your gilder's tip stuck in the size. So I don't like to do that. So instead of getting this adhered to tissue paper, what I like to do is adhere it myself, but to a piece of wax paper. So here I just have a sheet of wax paper, and what I like to do is just lay the wax paper on, take a cotton ball, and just gently brush the gold to adhere it now to the wax paper. And now I can handle the gold safely. So once I adhere my gold to the wax paper, come back to my panel here, I'm going to lay the gold. So I want to use it strategically. So I'm going to place it, try to place it in this upper corner here. And the trick is, as soon as the gold makes any kind of contact with the size, you can't move it around or else it's going to tear really bad. So then I'm going to take my cotton ball again, and I'm just going to press that gold into the oil size. And once everywhere has adhered, I'm actually going to put a good amount of pressure just to make sure it's adhered, and then very carefully peel the rest of the gold. And you can see anything that wasn't attached to the oil size has stuck to my wax paper, which makes this a very economical way to gild as well, because you're not wasting a lot of gold leaf. So I'm going to set this piece aside. I'm sure I can use those little bits and odds and ends later, but I'm going to adhere a fresh sheet. And I like to use 2 cotton balls. One is kind of dense, the one I'm using to rub, and this one's nice and fresh and soft, and that's the one I'll use to adhere my gold leaf. So then again, I just attach it to the waxed paper, and it has to be wax paper. Parchment paper doesn't work. Go ahead and lift. And then now I'm going to do this bottom corner. And I'm just checking. Actually, instead of going all the way to that bottom corner, I'm going to go ahead and start up here. And I'm going to overlap the sheets of gold maybe a millimeter or 2, maybe a little more. Because what I don't want to try to do is butt them up directly. It's very difficult to do that, but then you have a real nasty red line in between, so it's just better to overlap. So I'm going to overlap the gold and place, take my cotton ball, get it started. And then once everything is adhered, then I go ahead and give it some nice pressure, particularly in the overlap. I don't want there to be any seam there, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that pretty good with my cotton ball. But it's very important to not let your cotton ball touch either the sticky oil or the freshly laid gold leaf. It will take a day or 2 for this oil to fully cure and the gold to be safe to really touch. Oops. Try to salvage as much gold as I can, so I'm pressing that into the wax paper. And it looks like I'm going to lose a little bit of it, which happens. There's always some loss. And then I'm going to use that area that I have left over just to get that bottom edge. Like that. And right there. There we go. And since I have lots of little leftover pieces, I'm just going to use these pieces to get more of these irregular shapes. There we go. And maybe one more right in there. Oops. Another advantage of the wax paper is you can kind of turn it around, and because it's transparent, you can get very strategic in getting in those little areas of faulting, those little areas that need just a little bit of gold leaf. There we go. Awesome. So I'm going to just use the same sheet of wax paper to go ahead and get another sheet of gold leaf. So it probably will take me 4 sheets of gold Oops, that needs to lay straight. I just use my breath to flatten it out. And lift with the waxed paper. And now I'm going to start again up in that corner up here. Line it up the best I can through the transparent wax paper. Place, press, and pressure. Peel away. So it looks like I have a slight tear, a slight fold in there. So I'm going to fault that. I'm going to go ahead and address that with my previous sheet. And while I'm here, I might as well just lay in this connector, this little spot here. There we go. So any little tears, you know, because the oil is still exposed, you can just strategically place your wax paper and just give it some good pressure and it'll fill in any of those little tears and imperfections on the gold leaf. There we go. Give more pressure to that seam. We don't want any unsightly seams. And I'm going to go ahead and just use this piece here because it has a nice corner that can fit nicely in this corner here. Go. And a little bit of faulting. There we go. And also that little sliver in between the locks of hair. There we go. A little more. There we are. And I don't quite have enough gold leaf on this sheet to cover that whole area. So what I'm going to do is just get a fresh sheet of gold. Okay, go ahead and adhere that. There we are. And again, I'm going to overlap a few millimeters. Press. Pressure. And peel. And the bulk of that sheet of gold is adhered to my wax paper. So I just store this. I just set this aside to use in my next gilding project. So now what I'm going to do is just go over the gold leaf one more time, looking for any faults and any seams. And I just want to, with a good amount of pressure, with my cotton ball, just to make sure I address everything that needs to be addressed. Make sure that everything is nicely adhered. And you'll see little bits of flakes and seams of gold leaf raise up. Don't do anything for those now. We're going to actually go ahead later, once the gold slice has had a a good amount of time to cure, then it will become safe to actually clean the gold and also clean any gold that has gotten on the gesso. Just grabbing some more of those seams. There we are. I'm going to set this sheet aside to use later. And there it is. Our oil gilded icon using oil size and wax paper.